the Saw is family. I don't have a Leatherface mask or the Saw, but welcome to my Texas Chainsaw Massacre review. This franchise is a bit of a roller coaster like the Halloween series, but it was an entertaining experience, I will say that much. Let me do my usual disclaimer before starting. So if you have a different opinion of these films than I do, great. Doesn't mean you're an idiot or that you're wrong. It just means you had a different takeaway than I did of these films, and it's as simple as that. This is just my opinion and what I got out of these movies. So to start with, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This one was a little bit slow building. I wasn't sure what to make of it in like the first half, I suppose. I was just like, okay, this is a little bit weird with the hitchhiker and stuff like that. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. And then I got even more intrigued later on when I realized, oh, Leatherface isn't working alone. He's actually in a family unit, and he's mostly just the butcher of the family. So that was weird. It's like he was afraid of his family, even though he's this big burly guy and everything like that. It was really bizarre to me. And of course, I found it hilarious that the surviving girl just walked through several windows just to escape. I don't know, it was like at least two. Something like that. It was really entertaining. And it was one of the more bizarre slasher films, but also it was the only one of the slasher films that I binged that actually gave me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, which is impressive because it takes a lot for a movie to do that to me anymore because I'm so desensitized to all this stuff. And I can tell you, I can pinpoint the exact moment where I got goosebumps. It was the scene where one of the characters is, I think, the third person to go into the house, and he's looking for the couple that went in there, and he comes down to Leatherface's domain and he hears a knocking from the freezer, and he opens it up and he sees his friend in there, and then all of a sudden Leatherface appears and hits him over the head with a hammer. It's like, oh my god. It's very simplistic and yet it's very disturbing. It works so well for what it sets out to do. Very bizarre but very effective. Then the second one came out a whole, 12 years later. This one establishes a bit more to the lore of the family. It establishes their last name is Sawyer, and that Leatherface's first name is Bubba, which fits him quite well. This also kind of introduces a little bit of a romance plot between like Leatherface and this radio host, Stretch. It's really, really weird, but you know what, at the same time, it's some fucked up way. It's kind of adorable. This film felt like a good follow-up to the first. I know a lot of people thought this one was a little bit bizarre and a little bit too much focused on the humor. I didn't get that. I didn't feel like it was overly focused on humor. It had a little bit more, obviously, and it definitely had funny moments in it that I got such a kick out of. I mean, Drayton, his dialogue in general is just hilarious. But it never felt like it was out of character or over the top at any point in the film. It felt perfectly natural. Yeah, there was a lot more humor in here, but it fit. And I think it was a nice suitable follow-up to the first film. Then comes Texas Chainsaw 3, and this one is a bit bizarre. I'm not sure how it fits in the timeline, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a sequel to the second one, or if it's supposed to be just its own thing in the series, because it doesn't seem to make sense, because it introduces some extra family members and expansion for the Sawyers without really much explanation to them or anything like that. I mean, first it's just bizarre that Viggo Mortensen is in this. Before Aragorn, he was a Texas Chainsaw redneck. Oh man, it was so strange seeing him in this role. I mean, he did a good job. It's just, wow. I definitely gotta give this one kudos because I was definitely rooting for the survivors in this. Not that, I mean, the survivors and the Texas Chainsaw series, at least up until this point, have been, for the most part, likable. So it has that going for it. And this one, they were especially likable. Leatherface's look in this, I will say I didn't really care for. I mean, I don't mind him being a big guy and all that stuff, but the mask just looked hideous. I mean, obviously they're not supposed to be beautiful masks, but in the first two, I don't know, it suited him well. It worked well with the overall. I mean, the second one, obviously, he was very much in tune to the first one. And then the third one just looked completely different, and it just didn't seem right. I don't know why. I just didn't like the look of it. I know it's supposed to look disgusting and everything like that, but it just didn't fully work for me. It's just my personal preference. I didn't really like it. I also love that one scene where Leatherface is playing with the children's toy, trying to spell certain words out and stuff like that, and he just keeps putting in food for clown. 3, bizarre. I'm not sure how quite fits in, but it was enjoyable. It did drag a little bit, I think, in the first 2/3. Not extremely so, but it was a little bit slow at points, but nothing to the point that it really took me out of the film. So it was pretty decent. Then we come to the Next Generation. Oh boy, this one was hard to sit through. I was mostly going, what the hell, through most of this, because I had no idea what the fuck was going on. First of all, there is psychotic, evil Matthew McConaughey in this. Like, okay, first, now we got, you know, name actors. First we got Viggo Mortensen, and now we got Matthew McConaughey, and he's completely off his rocker in this, which makes it entertaining, but then again, any scenes where he's not in, it just kind of is just, ugh. Leatherface is barely in this, and he's basically does nothing of use except for maybe recreate a few scenes from the original. And when he's not doing that, he's just screaming constantly. It's very annoying. Although one thing that did keep me interested was the fact that the surviving girl in this looked a lot like my friend Lester. And so I was just watching all this going like, oh man, Lester's surviving Leatherface. This is great. It was really surreal because, I mean, it was almost one-for-one looked almost exactly like her. It was freaking me out. Overall, I would say if you're a fan of the Texas Chainsaw series and just only want to watch the highlights, give this one a pass. Aside from crazy Matthew McConaughey and the fact that I, you know, saw a lookalike of my friend, it's not worth it. This one is mostly, it drags, it's annoying, it's weird, and not in a good way. It's just like, what the hell? Then we come to the 2003 remake of the original. And while it has a lot of differences between the original and the remake, I didn't mind it so much. It felt like an interesting modern adaptation, even though it's still supposed to take place in the 70s, obviously. But it was entertaining, it was good, it's just certain things are a little bit off. I mean, the main cast of characters I found not as likable as the original. Not that the original cast were super likable or anything like that, but the new cast were a little annoying at times. Not overly so. It wasn't like Leatherface and the Next Generation bad, but it was a little grating at points. The new family dynamic for Leatherface in this was bizarre, and they gave him a different name. I don't know why. I guess to differentiate it from the older films. But he's called Thomas Hewitt in this. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to match as well as, you know, Bubba Sawyer. But, you know, I appreciate that they tried something new, tried to do their own take on the franchise. I think for the most part it worked, aside from a few bizarre things here and there. The guy pretending to be the sheriff was overly cruel for no reason. I don't know. I guess he's supposed to be a takeoff of Drayton, I guess. But even then, I don't know. It's like he was over the top. I will say, especially like towards the, you know, the last act of the film, the final surviving girl having to hide from Leatherface in the meat freezer, that was like, perfect. Honestly, they should have done something like that in the previous films, but it was nice to see something like that here since it's so fitting. I will also say, Leatherface's look in this, I don't like. Okay, the outfit's not bad. The outfit itself is usual Leatherface fare. I think their apron's a little bit darker than it normally is. That's fine. It's the mask. I hate the mask. Again, I know the Leatherface masks aren't supposed to look pretty. It's supposed to be disgusting and all that stuff, but this one was just like overly so, especially since Leatherface wears masks to like be somebody else or be prettier or anything like that. It just didn't make sense to me. It's wrinkly and like dark, and it makes Leatherface seem much older than he actually is. I just hate it. I know it's supposed to be gross. It doesn't fit Leatherface in my opinion. Then there was the prequel that came out 3 years later. This one definitely has a more bleak feeling. This because, you know, all the survivors aren't going to make it because obviously it's a precursor to what happens in the 2003 film. So you wish they would get out, but you know it's not going to happen. It's just like, ah, damn it, these guys are going to die. The weird thing is, it kind of just jumps ahead to the family as Leatherface as an adult working, you know. It's supposed to be a prequel or maybe an origin story, and they just jump ahead. I don't know, I don't get it. And it's really weird that they decided to have Leatherface be adopted, like he was a baby dropped off in a dumpster and picked up by this crazy family. I don't know, I think it's... I don't think that was necessary, but this is the remake, and it's got its own, you know, internal lore going on, so they can do whatever they want. I just find it bizarre. And I find it weird that they didn't really go into Leatherface's childhood or anything like that. They just went, oh, he was picked up in a dumpster adopted by the Hewitts, and jumped forward to as an adult, and why they started killing to eat people. It's because the town was going under, and that's why. I guess they're trying to give a little bit more justification for why they did this kind of thing, or maybe make you at least understand where they're coming from. You didn't really need that. I found it more interesting in the original series that they just saw human beings as food, you know? It's just their way of life. Then we come to Texas Chainsaw 3D, and I know this is one that a lot of people hate. It's supposed to be a sequel right from the original, and basically in the lore of this movie, right after the events of the first film, the surviving girl, I believe her name is Sally, she went to the police. They came, and basically a bunch of vigilantes, I guess, basically burned the house down and everybody in it. Amongst all the chaos, one of the guys who joined in with this finds a baby and takes her in because his wife wanted a child because she couldn't have her own children. So it's... okay, maybe it's not quite as similar to the prequel because it's not actually Leatherface, but it's his cousin who they named Heather. Now the problem is, the events of the Chainsaw Massacre, they always say take place in what, 73 or 74? But this movie came out in 2013, and yet the actress who plays Heather is 27 at the time of this movie's release. So they kind of got the timeline screwed up there. Because if they had done this accurately, this film takes place pretty much like about 40 years later. She should have been around 40. Also, the whole aspect of Heather inheriting something from her grandmother, but her grandmother, I guess, married into the family, like her last name was Carson or something. Or no, or maybe she married outside the family because she was a Sawyer and then married a Carson. I don't know, it's confusing. They don't really explain it very well. But so she's going to inherit her grandmother's, or was it me, great-grandmother's estate. So she takes a trip with her boyfriend and friends to go check it out. And of course they pick up this hitchhiker along the way, I guess to like do another nod to the original, but it's like... then they make the dumbass decision of be like, okay, we need to go to the store to get some things to make, you know, dinner tonight and have a great old party. Let's leave the guy that we just met, the hitchhiker, alone in the house. It's like, are you fucking stupid? Whatever, he gets his comeuppance because he gets killed by Leatherface in the end. I have to admit, the fact that this movie came out about 40 years after the original, and that they got Gunnar Hansen, who was the original Leatherface, to be in it as a cameo as one of the Sawyers in the house at the beginning, and they got the original surviving girl who played Sally to be the grandmother. That was so cool, and I honestly was getting Halloween 2018 vibes from that. It's just a shame, obviously, that this film wasn't as good as Halloween 2018. Aside from that, the majority of the film is the typical, you know, slasher stuff going on, which is fine. It's weird because I had an accumulation of like complaints about this movie, and then all of a sudden, like the last sequence started and I was just loving it. Now, this is where I'm probably going to differ with a lot of people. I completely understand that Leatherface is not a good guy. I mean, obviously he can't be held accountable for what he does because he doesn't know any better. He's a little bit different than the other slashers in that sense, in that, you know, he was raised to believe that this was the way to go about things. I don't know, just the point of after Heather learned that she was a Sawyer and seeing what happened to them, like the house being burned and everything of the sort. I know, it's like, it doesn't make sense, like, after he killed all her friends and stuff like that, she's like, wow, she forgived him quick, but at the same time, that guy who gave the house over to her did mention, you know, he doesn't know any better. Last time that a girl got away, he lost his family, so maybe that was helped see things from his perspective. It was just nice as a change of pace to have Leatherface have a bit of a happy ending. He gets a piece of his family back who learns to care about him. Because even like in the original movies and stuff like that, he just gets abused by his family and he doesn't know any better. He's just going along with whatever they want. The guy needs a freaking hug, even though he's completely messed up. The final climax, where Heather ends up helping him out and they stop the two guys who were, you know, back in the day, burned the house down, and so they got their revenge and then were able to go home in peace thanks to the sheriff, who was actually on their side, surprisingly. I was okay with this. I was just like, you know what? A lot of stupid bullshit going on. I know this is included in that. It's ridiculous, but I'm just so happy to see Leatherface get a nice ending for once. It was nice. I liked it. I liked it. People call me crazy for liking the ending of this film. I know it got a lot of hate, and it definitely deserves it. This is one of those films where it's like, it's a guilty pleasure, I guess. Where I know all the problems, I know all the issues. It's like going to a fast food restaurant. You know it's bad for you, and you know people are gonna give you shit for ordering it, but you don't care. You just want crap that day, and that's the issue. And that's me enjoying Texas Chainsaw 3D. Sometimes you want to watch the crap because it makes you feel good inside. And then that leads us to the final film in the Texas Chainsaw series, which is just called Leatherface. And out of all the movies in this franchise that I watched, I hated this one the most. And it was mostly because it got the character of Leatherface completely wrong. First of all, it's trying to be like a prequel to the Texas Chainsaw movie, which is just weird. And also in these two films, they changed his name again. I mean, his last name is still Sawyer, but they made his first name Jedediah, or Jed for short, which I guess can work. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They should have just stuck with Bubba. But Leatherface as a kid gets taken away to a mental asylum, and it's just like, no, what are we doing? Who is this, Michael Myers? No, this has never been Leatherface's. I never got that implication for Leatherface, you know, and the whole idea of there being a twist in the movie. I went in not even knowing any of the marketing around this film, so I had no idea there was supposed to be a twist about who was going to end up being Leatherface. Although I did find it weird that there was really not much emphasis on the character that seemed obvious that it would turn out to be him around Bud. But no, it turns out it's not him. It's the thin, attractive, you know, good-looking guy named Jackson who supposedly ends up being Leatherface. It was so dumb. It made no sense. They say it, if this is supposed to be, I mean, this is supposed to be tied in with Texas Chainsaw 3D. And they say it there. Jedediah Sawyer has the mental capacity of an 8-year-old. That does not work with this movie. In this movie, he's just a regular guy who gets a little bit disfigured and then decides to wear Leatherface masks because there is no, like, reason for it. I hate origin stories like this that not only completely get things wrong, but they put their focus on all of the wrong things. Most of the movie is focused on them escaping, this group escaping from the asylum, eventually one of them making their way back to the Sawyers, and that's another crazy thing, is like, Jackson just goes along with his family because there's no reason to it. He's been away from them for so long, and yet, because they just mentioned that they're his family and will take him in, he just is easily manipulated by them, even though he's been shown to be an intelligent, rational guy up until this point. So that makes no sense. Again, like with consistency with the character, even as he was in the Texas Chainsaw 3D, and with the character in general, and even the internal logic of the movie doesn't make sense. Because again, yeah, he's been away from his family for most of his life, and yet he just runs in and just decides to go along with whatever they want to do for no reason, just for the fact that they're his family, and that doesn't make any sense. You could have gone into the interesting aspects of Leatherface as a child and as a teenager growing up with his family, learning that people are food, learning about how to prepare meats, how to gather people and put them on the hooks and then put them in the freezer, all that kind of stuff. But instead they don't. Not to mention the fact that they kind of make his family overly villainous, which obviously the Sawyers are villains. Yes, we get that. But they really go into it as like the Sawyers being sadists, taking delight in watching the people suffer as they, kill them. And that's never been them. Yeah, okay, they might have gotten a little bit of pleasure doing it, what they do. But the main fact is that they treat people like they're food, like they're like a cow or something of the sort. So they just gather them up, try to subdue them, calm them down, and get them prepared for the slaughter. They don't see it as something to be, overly cruel about. They just do it. They want to do it fast, too. Exactly, because in the original, they talking about the fact, the grandfather's the best killer. He'll do it quick. Don't worry about it. That's why they have her over the barrel. They try to give it to the grandfather, who's like, too old, so he keeps dropping the hammer. That's the creep value of the Sawyer family, is that they really do see people as cattle. The Leatherface movie got his characters just so completely wrong. It just really annoyed me, the idea that they wanted to have this stupid twist. When you're going into a film wanting to make a twist as opposed to making a good, character study of or origin story of a character, you've lost the plot. Like, you don't make a plot twist for the sake of making a plot twist. That is so dumb. And of course, again, the whole, escape from the mental institution also didn't make sense for his character either. So, most of the time when watching this, it didn't feel like an origin story for Leatherface. It didn't feel like a Texas Chainsaw movie. It felt like a completely different movie that I was watching that just happened to have tacked on Leatherface, intro and ending. Jackson wielding the chainsaw and then making a face at the end, it didn't fit him at all. It came out of nowhere. It's like, when has this ever been this character? Because he's been defaced, so now he's gonna make masks? It doesn't work. I also don't like the idea of a Leatherface having been disfigured. I thought the whole idea is him being just, been born mentally disabled, and he makes faces out of the meat that they acquire for fun, because he likes it, because he likes being different people, not out of, I'm disfigured, I have to hide my face now to look reasonable again. It's just, I hate it. I hated it so much. I was legit angry after watching this film. By all means, when you're watching the Texas Chainsaw series, avoid this one at all costs, unless you want to get angry like I did, because it was awful. So yeah, that about sums up my view of the Texas Chainsaw series. A lot of ups and downs throughout this, but it was entertaining for the most part, and it was nice to get a bit more insight into Leatherface as a character, and see him in other scenarios, and just learn a bit more about him. So I appreciated that. I now have the Nightmare on Elm Street series to tackle, but that's going to be a while because I'm going to watch them all. So, until then, see you guys.